Onefinity is committed to providing the best machine possible to its customers. One way we do that is through our software updates. In this video, we'll be updating the initial controller software. We'll be updating the initial firmware on the Onefinity CNC, version 1.0.2. All machines shipped before October 1st, 2020 will have version 1.0.2. We'll be installing version 1.0.4. All machines shipped after October 1st, 2020 will come with this version installed. There are two ways of upgrading your firmware on your Onefinity CNC. The first of these is with a USB stick, and the second, which we will be using today, is Wi-Fi. The first step in updating our firmware on our Onefinity CNC is to visit our forum, forum.onefinitycnc.com, and look for the firmware update in the Files section. Let's move to the computer and download the file. In our address bar at the top of our web browser, we will type in forum.onefinitycnc.com. We'll click enter. That will bring up our forum, and we will scroll down to the Files section and click on that. This will bring up the firmware update 1.0.4. We'll click on that, and we will click on the blue link that says Onefinity-1.0.4 tar.bz2. We're going to click on that and download that. If you're going to be using a USB stick to perform your update, you are going to find your file in Downloads, and we are going to copy that. Then we will insert our USB. That will open it up, and we can now paste that file into this USB. We can now eject, remove our USB, and then we can plug this into the back of the controller. If you're going to be updating your firmware via the Wi-Fi, like we will be doing for the purposes of this video, you will need to follow these steps. We will download the link from the forum. Now we can locate that downloaded file in our downloads folder. So at the top of the page, we will open up a new tab, and we will type in our IP address. And this will load our Onefinity controller. So once we have our controller pulled up, we will click on the flyout menu in the top left corner. We'll go down to General. We'll click on that. We will click Upload under the Firmware section. We will locate our downloaded firmware file. We'll double click that, open it up, and our password is BuildBotics. We'll click Upload. And now our firmware is upgrading, and this usually takes about 2 minutes to complete. Now up at the top we can see under the words Onefinity it says CNC controller v1.0.4. That means our firmware is updated. At this point the IP address may be lost and read 0.0.0.0, so we will want to reboot our controller. One of the features under the firmware update 1.0.4 is under the flyout menu we see a shutdown button. We will click that, and we will click confirm shutdown. Now we will wait 1 minute. When we turn the controller off remotely, it shuts down the Raspberry Pi, but it doesn't turn the power completely off, so we will have to turn it off and on manually. Once we have turned the power off and back on to the controller, we can refresh, and it will now show us our IP address at the top of the screen like it should. With the new firmware update 1.0.4, here are some of the new features. We can see the expanded character input boxes so that the text is not cut off on the controller. We can see under the flyout menu we have our new shutdown switch. If we click on the flyout menu under General, we can go and we see a reset button under configuration. This will reset everything that is a non-network configuration back to factory settings. So we can click on the woodworker or the machinist edition depending on which machine you have. We'll click on the woodworker. We can see it has configured the machine to factory settings. We can click OK. We can see that we have the upgrade button now under firmware. From here on out, we will be able to click on this button and we can upgrade our firmware automatically. We can click the automatic check for upgrades, and up where it says controller 1.0.4, we will see a check mark if we have the latest firmware. Another thing we have is the probe connectivity feature. On our controller, we can see if we have a probe attached, our X, Y, and Z. With the probe, we put the magnet on the collet, and when the probe touches the bit, we can see that these buttons turn green. And behind the scenes, we have our stability and reliability, just making sure that your machine is running optimally. That concludes firmware update 1.0.4 with Onefinity. Just remember, if you have updated to 1.0.4, from now on you will go to the flyout menu, the general section, and click upgrade. You can check to make sure that your firmware is up to date with the automatic check for upgrades and the check by 1.0.4 just to confirm that you are up to date. Remember, firmware updates will always be posted to the forum, so if you are not connected to a network, you can still update through a USB.